Well, we know students have been through a lot during this pandemic, managing in-person and remote learning or going back and forth between the two in many cases. And schools have wrestled with how to give students some leniency while still holding them accountable. Douglas County Schools took a unique approach last semester. And this morning, I'm taking a 360 look at whether the district's grade scale change was fair and who, if anyone, it benefits. In life, you don't always get an A for effort. Precision matters. Points matter.
Grades do matter.
Grades matter. But in a pandemic, maybe there's some wiggle room. In November, Douglas County Schools noticed more students than last year were failing at least one class. So the district lowered the bar for a passing grade by shifting the numerical values for A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. Douglas County isn't alone. Around the country, some schools have tried to compensate students for a difficult year. For a 360 conversation on this, I spoke to Douglas County's superintendent, educators and policy experts, parents, and a student. Landon Rosenhon says Douglas County's decision helped him pass 3 classes he was failing.
It just gave me a lot of more opportunities to finish all my credits, not have to retake anything.
He did really well until I'd probably say the beginning of the year.
Landon's mom says she was happy her son got a grade more in line with his pre-pandemic performance.
This brought on a little bit of a spark in his eye, and he finished strong. I mean, we did have a few low classes, but all in all, it really helped him out.
But Jen Iverson, parent of a Highlands Ranch High School junior, isn't happy her son passed an English class with a 54%.
Typically, to me, that would mean failing, which would mean that he did not learn what he was supposed to learn during that class, and he would repeat it.
She feels the grade change was a disservice to struggling students and unfair to A students in other districts.
Some other student is working their butt off, really trying hard to get a 4.0, and some other child who is, probably also working their butt off, but gets that little extra that they really didn't earn.
But Kevin Wellner, director of the National Education Policy Center at CU Boulder, points out that grade inflation or grading on a curve are nothing new, and grades have always varied from school to school and district to district.
Grades themselves are an interesting tool that we use in education. It's an imperfect tool, right? It's always been an imperfect tool.
Of course, GPA is one of the tools used to determine if a student gets into college, which begs the question, are Douglas County students being given an unfair advantage over other districts? Shalanelachuga, an MSU professor who studies equity in education, says not necessarily.
Schools in higher ed in general have been moving away from these kinds of quantitative, singular measures of ability.
CU Boulder doesn't have a minimum GPA requirement and no longer requires the SAT or ACT for admission.
We know that standardized tests have a tendency to not predict success in higher education for lots of BIPOC communities, right? Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Lachuga believes colleges and scholarships should continue taking a holistic approach, factoring in students' backgrounds and life experiences, including their pandemic experience.
Wouldn't it be great if, as part of a personal statement, you could talk about how did you adapt to COVID conditions, right? And read those as indicators of resiliency and the ability to be flexible and adaptable and to ultimately be academically successful, right?
Which brings us back to the question, why change letter grades when what really matters is what the kids have learned?
The better intervention in those studies is intensified supports. So someone is behind, find the additional resources and time to work with the student and help that student catch up.
Douglas County's interim superintendent says that's what they intend to do now in the spring semester.
So I think when you work with each student and you assess what's essential and what's prepared for readiness, you're always making adjustments throughout the year and also in concurrent years.
He says the grade change was a one-time thing, so students like Landon will have to double down now.
Let's work as hard as we've always worked, and you can prove yourself.
Knowing that in life, you don't always get a pass, even in a pandemic. Nicole Brady, Denver 7. We want to hear from you. What do you think about changing the grading scale for A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's? Well, you can email your thoughts to 360@thedenverchannel.com.